Welcome to the Woman Makes Things Happen show. My name is Agnes van Rhijn, and I'm a holistic business mentor to professional women who want to reach their full potential in life and in business, but while remaining true to who they are and what is important to them. I am also the founder and the host of the Woman Who Makes Things Happen show. And today at the Woman Who Makes Things Happen show, it is my privilege to be interviewing Sage Hobbs. Sage is a coach and a speaker known for her direct, insightful, and compassionate approach to communication, relationships, and personal growth. She's also the author of Naked Communication. She's worked with thousands of individuals and groups for more than 15 years to both transform their relationships and increase their personal fulfillment. Sage deeply believes that our happiness and success are directly related to the quality of our relationship and that it is possible to create the fulfilling relationships we really want. Welcome to the Woman Who Makes Things Happen show, Sage. How are you?
Hi, I'm great, Agnes. Thank you so much for having me.
It is a pleasure. I love what you're about, so I can't wait to hear more about you. Tell us more about you.
Awesome, thanks. So, oh my gosh, how do you begin, right, in your life story?
Just start somewhere.
I'm going to start a little bit with what got me here. So, I am a cancer survivor. When I was 23, I had a experience that really shifted how I wanted to live my life in a more intentional way. And I had, I'd just been traveling after graduating from college. I was in Africa, which was really a lifelong dream. And it was Kenya. It was amazing. I got back to Philadelphia, where I'm originally from, and I got my first real job, where I got to go and change the world. I was going to transform public education in inner cities, which is a big undertaking. It hasn't worked for many decades. And I was fired up. I was so excited. And I really felt like most 23-year-olds do, quite invincible. And like I had all the time in the world to fulfill my dreams and to make them happen. And I was a go-getter. I was always really ambitious. I think that's just been my, maybe it's the first child thing. It's always been in my DNA to really go big for what I want. So I was 23 years old and I'm sitting at my new desk in West Philadelphia. I was working in 4 different middle schools underneath a federal grant. I was literally, I felt like everything was about to happen. Mm-hmm. And I felt this little piece-sized lump right above my collarbone. And luckily, after a few weeks of thinking it'll go away and realizing that it wasn't, luckily I actually did listen to some of that beautiful thing called intuition and got it checked out, only to discover that it was Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a lymphatic cancer. And I had to do chemotherapy and radiation, and I lost my hair. And it was like from all the time in the world to, oh my gosh, time is really finite.
Yeah.
And yeah, so, you know that intellectually, right? But when it like comes up against you,
then others to experience it.
Yeah. Exactly. And at a time in your life where, honestly, you think you're not thinking that way. There is this whole age and stage thing. I'm at a different age and stage thing now. So I've seen more hardship and heartache, in the 2 decades since then. But at that stage, it really was like a big wake up call. And I'd always been pretty intentional about how I lived my life. I had amazing role models in that. My parents were dream chasers also, and really taught me that you should love your work and your work should have meaning and value. So I was really grateful that I already had that value. Mm-hmm. But what happened was when I was pronounced well and, then it was like, okay, your life is back. It's yours again. I had my foundation was so rocked. And I felt a lot more fear and a lot more urgency, like fear that it could happen again, and urgency to live the life I really wanted now. So there was a lot more there was more panic. I actually really struggled with panic afterwards because I was less grounded than I had been. I was more grounded in the realities of life, but less grounded in the certainties, if that makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
So I'll fast forward. I moved to Colorado from Philadelphia to sort of regroup and take a year to really kind of feel healthy and get in touch with my body again. And I had a friend out here, and I worked out here one summer, and it's a really gorgeous place. It's a much slower, more chill vibe than Philly, where I was born and raised and had gone to college. And I decided to get a master's in counseling psychology. And I spent 10 years working in public schools with teens and families. And it was awesome. It was great work. It was soul-filling work. And it was also exhausting and so much trauma that you have to hold. And it was adventurous. I always wanted, after I got sick, it was really clear to me, I wanted to make a difference in the world. I wanted to have adventure. And I really wanted to do it with surrounded by people I loved, you know? So for 10 years, the schools worked for me. You know, it was a way to make a difference. It was very adventurous because things were always changing. And I met my husband, and he was a teacher, and the lifestyle was beautiful with us having the summers off. But then, as things go, I had a second kid, and I'm sitting there holding my sweet new baby. And I really just got clear it was time for another change. It was just, I didn't want to go back. I really, really, really didn't want to go back to work when the time was coming closer to do that. And it wasn't that I didn't want to work, because quite frankly, I would be a horrible full-time stay-at-home mom. It's just not in my DNA, and my kids would tell you so, as would my husband. So it was more that I was looking and I was thinking, there's something else, like some other creative outlet, some other opportunity for leadership, some other way for me to be of service to a different population in a broader scale. And I had the space of maternity leave, which sounds funny because for those who are listening who've had children, you know, it's this weird time in your life where you're busy, but you're only, so, you know, you also have some space. I felt like I had some space the second time because I knew I wasn't going to kill the baby because I'd done it once before.
The second time is different.
The second time is much different. The first time is a fog. The second time I really had time to reflect, and I just started really exploring, okay, well, what else is it that I'm called to do? And coaching was a totally natural fit for me because I had this background in counseling, and I had been doing transformational work since I was 11. My parents were really involved in various kinds of transformational work starting in the 70s. And so I'd been doing seminars, and they were both executive transformational coaches internationally. And it was like, oh yeah, kind of what I love to do anyways is that. What do I want that to look like? And I started trying it out. Just, you know, I started doing that before I ended my school counseling career, and set myself up to take that leap, which was really scary. It was super scary. I mean, my husband's a teacher. He's an amazing teacher. It's his work. Like, that's the right work for him. But you're not a millionaire teaching children. That's just not the path. So there was fear and, you know, I, as somebody who specializes in relationships and communication, there was a lot of talking that happens between the two of us to get to a place where he really also felt safe enough for me to make that leap. I couldn't just, you know, I wasn't 20 something anymore, and we had 2 kids, and I had a partner that I was really committed to having all of that work really well. Mm-hmm. So we had to get on the same page.
Yeah, that helps, definitely. Sage, if I can rewind a little bit, because typically what you are describing as a process from the moment on you felt that you wanted something else is the type of journey that a lot of women can experience. I would just like to have a feel for how long did you test it out while still being in your job?
Great question. And, you know, I think there's lots of junctions where, you know, in our lives where we look at which way we're going to go. You know, even moving to Colorado was a big decision. I had, you know, leaving at that time, I left again, another secure job. And at that point where all my family lived. So every time, right, you have to assess what makes you feel ready enough to make the leap. And it's, you know, it's individual specific. Some people are more comfortable with risks, and some people need a little more time. So when I left my real career, my stable master's degree, benefits, pension plan, people thought I was absolutely crazy. Like, if you get a job in a good school district and you're working 7 minutes from your house, decent salary actually for the amount of time that you work, people really look, and I was not yet 40. People are like, what are you talking about? So for me, I think it was about, let's see, my daughter was born in April, And I stayed home, I think, for 5 months, and I thought about it then, started doing my research for which coach training programs I wanted. And I went back to work in the fall, and I finished out until the following school year, the end of May. So I got clients in that period of time. So from probably December to May, let's say 6 months or so.
6 months or so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
6 months or so.
As you say, it's very specific from one person to the other. I know that
It really
it took me something like 2.5 years before I really dared. I was doing it in parallel of my job, and then at some point I started working part-time, etc. But it's taken me, a good 2 years before I actually dared. And some other people just go for it. So that's why I like to point at it to as you very clearly said, from one person to the other, it is different. Yes, at this stage, I would say of evolution in companies with how much I can't talk today. How do you call it? Redundancy, etc. That you have. It is better to still have some financial security before you actually jump. But it's really different from one person to the other. Yes. And the other thing that you are pointing at that I find extremely interesting as well is that you choose to find the support of your husband, but it's not because you choose to get it that you always get it. So sometimes people will feel alone and not supported. Because what you're doing is a scary move for people who love you, but it's maybe a scary move for themselves as well.
Totally. And I really love what you said, because in terms of financial security and that piece too, there's an expression here in the States around, if you leap, and I forget who said it, but if you leap, the net will appear. And I've grappled with that a little bit with my own clients and myself when they're making changes and there's, big growth, because I kind of feel like actually weave a bit of that net first. And then the jumping is easier.
Yeah. I tend to say that.
Yeah. So, and I also have worked with enough people and lived a rich enough life to realize that not everybody's financial situations are the same. They're simply not. So I think that you can be your most creative self and be of best service when you're not operating from absolute fear.
Yeah.
So if you're terrified that you can't pay your rent next month or your mortgage or whatever, it's a lot harder to create and to share and to generate a business. So I fully agree with you. You really want to look at what that's going to take for your particular situation, and you don't want to wait too long. So I'm the kind of person, like, how do I say this? I can't really be stopped once I've sort of decided to, if I am stopped, it's at a cost to my joy and my vitality and my contentment. Right. So I think my husband, as soon as I brought this idea to him, knowing me and fortunately really loving and respecting me, knew that we were going to figure out how to do this, because ultimately if I was miserable in my old role, and at that point, once I decided there was something else, I really wasn't going to be fulfilled in the same way in my old role.
I cannot imagine you doing that.
Right. I know. Well, I'm quick, so I'm good in a crisis, and I love teenagers. There were things about it that were fabulous, but it wasn't like it was time. That's all I'll say. People who still do that work, like, seriously, big praise to them. It's amazing work, but it was just time. And I think my husband also knew that. So while it was terrifying, the work that I do is really about putting your connection as your primary goal in all of your conversations and in all of your communications and the way that you show up in business and in your personal life. So honestly, he and I, that's the deal, right? We want to put our connection ahead of any of our fears, concerns, anger, righteousness, opinions. And so we just kept coming back to that. Like, every time he'd express a concern, I would really need to get his concern so I could bring us closer together, versus if we went at it like this, it was, nobody was going to win. So that was helpful, that we had already been practiced in how to continuously come together, even when there was conflict or fear or,
Excellent. And so what would you say has been your biggest challenge?
in making this leap.
Yeah.
Two
Or,
things.
yeah.
Go ahead. Did you want to add to that?
No, I was just going to say during the leap or after, but
During the leap or after. Okay, good. So fear.
of course.
Fear was the biggest challenge initially, and still is in some ways. Fear, and I think I'm going to call it naivete. I think of myself as a pretty worldly, bright human being, but I have a master's in counseling psychology. I had no background in how to run a business.
Mm-hmm.
So, I knew that, but I didn't know the depth.
You don't realize to what extent.
Yeah. I just thought it'd be easier. Thought it'd be easier, get clients. I mean, this whole idea of what's your niche and who's your ideal client and how do you gain visibility and traction. And I really think I had an old school mindset around you just sort of like hang up your shingle, your metaphorical shingle, and thus it happens. So that was naive. And that was my biggest challenge. I've had lots of growth and success and opportunities in the time that I've been in business, but my biggest challenge for sure was my own learning curve for getting clients, deciding exactly what I wanted to be about. When I finally decided I'm going to write the book, I've always wanted to write a book. That was actually an extraordinary process for my own clarity. So what came out of the process of writing the book, Naked Communication, was not only my work being available to the world at a very affordable book price, which I loved the idea of, like mass transformation of people's listening and courage and connection and communication skills. And, that to me was exciting that it could impact so many at a really affordable rate. But the process of writing it also really helped me gain my own clarity around what is my message? What am I really here to offer? And so it was scary to write it. It was scary to share it, but it was profoundly helpful for me and hopefully for others to do so. So I think that I would say fear and naivete, and those things come up again and again and again. So I'm not over it.
No. I mean, fear is a lifelong process. We always will have it. So that's normal. But there is a way to learn how to live with it. And as I always say, use it as a fuel instead of letting it paralyze you. Coming back
Absolutely.
to the book, because I realize that I quite often have women that have been writing a book, but one thing that I think rarely discussed with them, in fact, is the process of writing a book. So you have your family, your personal life, you run a business, and on top of it, you decide to write a book. How do you go along? How did you do that?
That's a good question. First of all, I think there's something really different between writing a nonfiction versus a fiction book. So I'm going to speak only from my experience of writing a nonfiction book. Because I think fiction requires like things to percolate in there. Maybe, if you talk to J.K. Rowling or something for quite a while, for the stories and the characters to smolder in a different way. But for me, I got clear I wanted to do it. And then I got some help, right? So I got some coaching from somebody who had effectively written books pretty quickly. And she kept bringing me back to that was possible again and again and again. Like, oh no, it can be done, Sage. This information that you have within you I know relationships and communications like to my bone at this point, to my bones. And so it was more a question of how do you get something that's super second nature to you in some ways articulated for others in an effective manner. So I got help, with somebody who just sort of helped keep me on track, like keep going. And I started telling people I was going to do it. So there was social accountability.
Yeah, I was going to say accountability there.
There really was. I put that social accountability into place. And then I figured out when it was going to happen. And so we have often taken a huge 5,000-mile road trip across the United States with our children in the summers, which is insane and awesome. And so I just said, okay, I'm going to get up before everybody. Many days of the summer, I just woke up an hour and a half before my family did. And in the summer, I can do that because it's light and bright and it's sort of the sacred quiet time, so for me that worked. And so I just got serious about it, that was, I got help for somebody to keep me on track. I made some social accountability to myself. I figured out a routine. I created an outline. That was the first and key, most essential piece, was to not just sit down and write. Like, I don't personally think that that is the most effective way to get it done. If you have like just your bare bones even of the flow and the story of how, yeah. So that was huge. And then lastly, a tip that somebody gave me that really helped me do it quickly was I dictated parts of it. And I was really resistant to that.
I've heard that a lot.
What's that?
I said, I have heard that a lot. Is it really effective?
For me, as you might guess from talking to me, I love to talk.
No.
Comes out easily. I'm relatively, articulate. And so for me, dictation was awesome because I can have a conversation with you or anyone about their relationship and have for my entire life, with ease. I can just talk to you about, that's what's going on with you and your husband. Let's break down how you could have responded differently, how you could make that request in another way where he would be more likely to hear it next time. I can talk about those things so easily. So, and there's science around, physical activity and how that helps your brain function. So I would walk. I would just take my iPhone and I'd open up my Google Docs. Within Google Docs, the same Google document, I would just go to the chapter that I'd been working on and put in my little earbuds, and I'd go for a walk and talk through a few chapters. There were tons of mistakes. I had to edit it down, but it helped. I mean, literally, I got out twice as much as with my fingers. And I'm it was fun.
Very good tip. Excellent.
Yeah.
So that's something we learned about writing a book. And
are you going to write one?
I take the lessons. I have been saying, because I don't like writing at all. But I do like talking, and
right.
and I'm also very clear about my topic, etc. So I have it all there. So I have a book in me.
Yes.
I need to get it started somehow. And I have one person in the Facebook world who regularly remind me of it.
Oh, good.
The book you will be writing this year.
Right, your book, right, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, so because I'm getting conscious of time also, it's very interesting what you just described about how to write a book, because a lot of women that I've been speaking to could definitely start their business that way as well. So it's very valuable information that you gave. Coming back to what you are doing, can you tell us more specifically who you work with and what you do with them?
So what I do is I work with bright and passionate women who want to improve their ability to communicate with more courage and confidence in all of their relationships. So their marriages, their collegial relationships, their parenting relationships with their children, a lot of times with their peer relationships, wanting to really have greater depth and intimacy with the women in their lives and feeling a longing to be more real and less polished with people. And that's the work that I do. And it's been extraordinary to watch just huge transformations in their own showing up, finding their voice, making requests, handling conflicts with more grace and ease, not just saying yes to everything and then being resentful about it. So how they communicate with themselves and how they communicate outwardly to others.
Excellent. And so I suppose that you work worldwide, no limitation geographically.
No limits, no people. Let's see. I've worked with people from coast to coast. And then I have in my online space, more people from around the world. It's been fun to watch the book sales actually come in from all different countries because Amazon's amazing like that. So cool.
Give us your website. Where can people find you?
Sure. You can find me at sagebhobbs.com. There's a B in there. And you can buy the book there. You can buy the book on Amazon. You can find out, rarely do I have that many spots open for individual clients, but I usually have a couple. And there's a way to speak with me and see if it's a fit. If you're really ready to play a bigger game in terms of how you show up in the world and connect to others, and if one of your relationships is really a challenge for you and you're looking for some support in that, it's powerful to then take that and translate it to all your relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No, the type of work you do is so badly needed. So communication is essential. And what I like in what you're describing is, and that's what I refer to in my work as well, is that it's first about communicating with yourself before you can properly communicate with others. So that's so key, so key. Sage, thank you very much for your time. I've really enjoyed this. I do love your energy. I can really feel it. And so for the listeners and viewers, because there's an audio version of this interview as well, if you too want to really give another dimension to your life, if you want to have a business that supports the life that you want for yourself and for those around you, you can get a private and discovery consultation with me by going on my website, agnesvanrijn.com, and that's the usual 3 W's, ANYESVANRHIJN.com. Thank you very much and see you in the next interview. Goodbye.